yesterday's notes. We are reviewing solving quadratic equations by factoring and by using the quadratic formula. So, whether you're solving by factoring or using the quadratic formulas must be in standard form before you start factoring or before you use the quadratic formula. Anybody remember what standard form is? Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Yep, if it's an equation, we're going to say it's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So here's your two blanks I've uncovered. So if we solve by factoring, the first thing we do, so we factored yesterday, we reviewed factoring yesterday. When you solve a quadratic equation by factoring, the first thing you have to do is make sure it's written in standard form. That means rearrange everything so it looks like this. The next thing you would factor, which we learned how to do yesterday, or reviewed how to do yesterday. Then from there, you set the factors equal to 0. Alright, y'all caught up with me? Second picture, then we solve, so there'll be, usually there's two equations. Then we solve both equations, and we write it in set notation. So that's those little squigglies, the braces. So we're going to do an example. We've got two examples. Example 1, this one's already factored, so you'll just see from...
We've already do this.
We have. This is a review unit. You're exactly right.
So all we're going to set it up. Well, it's already set it up.
So it's already been factored. So if it's already been factored, then we get to start on step 3.
So it's going to be k plus 1 equals 0 and then k minus 5 equals 0.
That's exactly right.
And then for the first one, we want minus 1 to both sides. That would be k equals what, negative 1?
Mm-hmm.
And the other one would be k plus 5 and both sides would be k equals 5.
Yep, and we're going to write it in set notation. The solutions to this equation are negative 1 and 5, and that is the set notation part. We set it equal to 0, we solved, and then we wrote our solutions in set notation.
I love those.
Okay. Now, this one, not factored and not in standard form yet. So this one we've got to do all of our steps. The first thing we've got to do is write it in standard form. That just means move everything to one side and put it in order. X squared first, x term second, constant third, right? So here, I've got to get rid of this negative 5. Do you remember how to do that? Plus what?
5.
Plus 5 to both sides. So x squared minus 11x, this is a constant, so it gets added to that constant. X squared minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. Now this is an a equals 1.
Can't we like throw this together?
Hmm? So we're going to do, we're looking for the factors of 24 that will equal, when you add them, negative 11. Remember us talking about this? So what two factors of 24 that, if you add them together, will you get negative 11? So if you're not sure, remember, start listing the factors. 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8 looks like a candidate, right? Both of my signs are going to have to be negative, because this is a positive number, so these are going to both be positive or both be negative. Since when I add them, I get a negative, it's going to be negative 3 and negative 8. Does that sound familiar? That's what we did yesterday, reviewed yesterday. Now, since this is a equals 1, all I've got to do is give myself my parentheses, and since it's an equation, I'm going to write equals 0. X goes in both first spots. The size of the X, fill out the rest of my parentheses.
And then we go x minus 3 equals 0, and then x minus 8 equals 0.
Mm-hmm.
And then plus 3 to that, instead of both sides, will be x equals 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then we plus 8 both sides, and it'll be x equals 8.
Mm-hmm. And set notation, I'm going to write it in squiggly braces. Okay? Any questions?
I didn't like this one.
All right, so let's look down here. Now we are going to solve using the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula, right? So we have to write our equations in the standard form. Remember, because we need A, we need B, and we need C, because that's what is in the quadratic formula. A, B, and C, right? Using the quadratic formula is the only method, and I neglected to put boxes here, but the only method that allows you to solve any quadratic equation. Not all quadratic equations are factorable. Technically, I guess you can solve any quadratic equation by graphing, but that's also not really practical. A quadratic equation has 3 possible number of solutions. It could have no solution, one solution, or 2 solutions.
Wait, isn't there like one that says like none solution, one solution, and like 2 is just like many solutions?
A linear equation. You can have no solution or all real numbers in a linear equation, yeah. Remember, the solution to a quadratic equation is only the points where it intersects the x-axis, so the points on the x-axis where the parabola crosses. So it's not going to have an infinite number. But a linear equation, any 2 points on that line will satisfy that equation. Yeah. All right, y'all caught up with me? All right, so this is the formula we're going to be using. These are the steps for solving using the quadratic formula. First, once again, write the equation in standard form. Second step is identify your A, your B, and your C. So I should literally see A equals some number, B equals some number. That's part of your work. C equals some number. Paul, you're supposed to be writing this down, buddy. After we identify A, B, and C, we substitute the values into the quadratic formula. You could also think of that as plug-in. So substitute is the same as plug-in. I don't care if you say plug-in or substitute. Either one of those are acceptable. Then we're going to simplify. And then we're going to write in set notation just like we would if we were solving it by factoring. We are going to do some examples of that together. Once again, today you're only doing the even problem. One side of the worksheet is you're solving by factoring, and the other side is you're solving using the quadratic formula, so make sure you're following the directions. Okay, y'all caught up with me yet? Okay, so let's look at example 3. Example 3, is that one in standard form? Is that equation written in standard form? DePaul says yes, Aiden says no. Let's go back. This is standard form, right? Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0.
Oh, yeah, it is.
X squared, x, c, 0. This one is in standard form, so we don't have to do that one.
The other one is.
Right, this one is not. Good job. So the next step is identify our A, B, and our C. So that's what I want you to do now. Tell me, what is A?
1.
Yes, the coefficient of x squared is 1. What is B?
Is that negative 2?
Negative 2, yep. And what is C? Negative 35. So it's already in standard form. We've identified our A, B, and C, which we can't do unless it's in standard form. Now we're going to plug in the A, B, and C into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of B, so opposite of negative 2, plus and minus the square root of B squared, so that's negative 2 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 1, and times C, which is negative 35. All over 2 times A. Any questions?
Can we do that on that calculator?
We can. Let's go ahead and do this first. So let's go ahead and say x equals, what's the opposite of negative 2? 2. Plus and minus, let's give ourselves an empty square root. Let's go ahead and simplify the denominator. 2 times 1 is 2. So now we can do this on our calculator. So let's practice it. So it's negative 2, so 2 negative button, x squared, minus 4 times 1 times 35 negative equals, so that's 144, but let's not even clear it out of our calculator, leave that in. Now, what we really need is the square root of 144, right? So why don't we go ahead and hit the square root of x button, and we'll know we can replace the square root of 144 with 12. So now we have x equals 2 plus and minus 12 divided by 2. And now we're going to write two equations, right? Because remember, the plus and minus tells you to write two equations. So x equals 2 plus 12 divided by 2, and x equals 2 minus 12 divided by 2. And you can do that on your calculator as well. 2 plus 12, don't forget to hit the equal sign here though, divided by 2. So x equals 7, and now on your calculator, 2 minus 12 equals, divided by 2 equals negative 5, and we're going to write that in set notation. Negative 5, 7. Any questions? All right, let's look at example 4. Y'all caught up with me?
Hey, yeah.
So example 4 needs to be written in standard form. What do I do to get that one in standard form?
You got a new four on the other side.
Yep, the 4's got to go on the other side. How do we get it there?
Minus
-4, that's right.
both sides.
Yep. Now, this is 0, right? So we need that equal to 0. There's not a constant here, so I just write 15x squared minus 8x minus 4. Because remember, you can only add or subtract from like terms. There's nothing that's a constant, so that just gets written in there. Now we identify our A, our B, and our C. See, if we just tried to find our C when it was written like this, we would have used a +4, but our C is not +4, right? Our C is -4. Our B is -8, and our A, 15. So now we plug in to our quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of B, so the opposite of -8 plus and minus B squared, so -8 squared minus 4, remember 4 is part of the formula, so that number is always 4, times A, in this case A is 15, times C, C is -4, all over 2 times A, which is 15. Tyrese, you following along, buddy? So now we're going to simplify. X equals the opposite of -8 is +8, yep, plus and minus. We're going to give ourselves our blank radical because we're going to use our calculator, so we don't have to do any hard work there.
30 over 30.
Yes, over 30. So now on our calculator, we're going to fill in what goes under that radical and then simplify it before we go on. 8 negative x squared minus 4 times 15 times 4 negative buttons equals 304. So we're going to put 304 there.
We can't square. I mean, we can't,
We can square root it, but it's not a perfect square, so we're going to round to the hundredth place. So 17.44. So that is we're going to replace the square root of 304 with 17.44. So now we've got to write our two equations. Well, first we're going to write this one. X equals 8 plus or minus 17.44 divided by 30. And now this tells us we need two equations. So I'm going to do the plus, and then we'll do the minus. And these we can just do, use our calculator, but we're going to use the equal sign at the end here when we get to doing the numerator. So 8 plus 17.44 equals divided by 30. And so now that x equals 0.848, 0.8, we're going to round that to the hundredth place, 0.85. And we're going to do this one on our calculator. 8 minus 17.44 equals,
it just be 0.31.
yes, it's a negative though, right?
Yeah, negative 0.
Negative 0.031. And we're going to write that in our set notation.
We're supposed to do the other one like that too? Right in this.
Yeah, I did. I just wrote it up at the top.
Oh.
All right. And one more. How am I going to get this one in standard form? It's not equal to 0. I need it equal to 0, right?
Subtract.
Subtract. What are we going to subtract?
18.
Yep, 15W, right? So this 25W squared. There's nothing to add or subtract negative 15W to, so I just write that. And then it's plus 2, and that's 0, right? So now this is where we get to determine what is our A, what is our B, and what is our C.
Our A is 25, our B is negative 15, and our C is 2.
Nice. 25, negative 15, and 2. So now, instead of x equals, because our variable is w, it's going to be w equals the opposite of b.
15. Wait, no, negative 15.
Very good. Opposite of negative 15 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So you're using that formula. Minus 4 times a, which is 25, and times c, which is positive 2. All over 2 times 25. So w equals, opposite of a negative is a positive 15, plus and minus. I'm going to leave that and simplify 2 times 25 to 15. Now we're going to do the 15 negative button, x squared, minus 4 times 25 times 2, 25. And now, rather than clear that out of the calculator, just hit square root of x.
Stop.
Yes, so now we're going to replace the square root of 25 with just 5, because the square root of 25 is 5. So now we're going to rewrite that. So that equation still has that plus minus symbol in it. So now we're going to separate that into two equations. 15 plus 5 divided by 50, and 15 minus 5 divided by 50. So then we can do it on our calculator. 15 plus 5 equals, divided by 50, equals 0.4. And then 15 minus 5 equals, divided by 50. Very good, 0.2. And now we write it in set notation, which just means write it in the braces. And put a comma in between them. All right, what do you think? All right.
Yeah.
So you have a fair amount of time. You have 25 minutes to be working. Remember, you only have to do the even ones, so you're doing half of that worksheet front and back. Make sure that the ones that say solve by factoring, you solve by factoring. Make sure the ones that say solve by using the quadratic formula, you solve using the quadratic formula. Any questions for me? After you scan and submit your notes? Does anybody need me to go back any place on here? Did everybody get your notes from yesterday scanned and submitted? And your worksheet from yesterday scanned and submitted?